The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello, and thank you for joining us today. We are Dave and Darlene from Phase One Computing. My partner Darlene and I have been writing business intelligence reports now for almost 2 years, and Crystal reports for many years prior to that. We completely enjoy writing reports and would like to share some of the things we've learned by building this sales comparison report from scratch using an existing container. Lots of people have called us over the last couple of years to ask questions about writing business intelligence reports. They were in all various stages of development in their report writing skills and wanted to grow their knowledge about this very exciting tool and begin producing powerful reports for themselves and their clients as well. Darlene and I have decided to put this webinar together to share some of the things we've learned with everyone. The report we're about to create together covers a lot of concepts that can be used to create other reports, and I promise you that none of it is hard, and at the end we will have created a very useful report. We will do this without ever setting foot in the connector module. You will not be required to know any SQL, and you will not have to know how to create a container. Everything we will cover can be achieved using the report manager and an existing container that every one of you already has. Just a bit about the GoToWebinar controls that you have during the sessions. To open and close your control panel on the right of your screen, you can select the orange arrow. To submit text questions, please use the questions box on your panel. Both today and tomorrow's sessions will be recorded, and the link will be emailed to you next week. As a reminder, there will be a drawing for an 8-gig iPod next week. The names of all attendees who attended both sessions will be eligible. You must actually attend the sessions to qualify. So if you sign in, like I do sometimes, just to get a recorded copy and bail out, you will not be eligible. Okay then, let's get started, Dars.
Hi guys, thanks for coming. Whenever Dave and I write a custom report, the first step is to acquire the data set and a report layout. We find that beginning with a sample spreadsheet works best. Next, we identify fields and properties needed to develop the report. Data fields and expressions are known as columns in Sage Peachtree Business Intelligence, or SPBI for short, because that's a long word to say. This analysis will help you determine which container to use for your report. To help you better understand which container to use, there is a data dictionary on the Alchemex community, and we will share the link to that at the end of this presentation. On the report we will be writing, which is on your screen, you will notice that there's 2 groups of similar information on one sheet. The premise of this report is to compare the same sales information over 2 different periods of time. We will use pivot tables to represent the 2 periods of time you want to compare. In order to produce this kind of report, we will build a union report made up of 2 separate standard reports. Each standard report will have one of the 2 different sales periods. The standard reports will be called Sales Period 1 and Sales Period 2. Looking at your screen, we need to identify the columns or the data fields needed for the report. We need company name, customer name, customer type, item type, line quantity, line sales amount. From the Peachtree company you will be using, open your Business Intelligence Report Manager. SPBI uses AutoConnect for the container, which simply means that it will connect to the active company open in Peachtree to provide the report data. So don't have multiple companies open when writing BI reports. Only the company you will be writing the report for. For this demonstration, Dave and I will be using our old-time favorite, Bellwether Garden Supply. As your screens refresh in the Report Manager, you will notice reports are in folders. If it sounds like I've fallen asleep, it's because I'm waiting for your screens to refresh and I'm not sure of the refresh rates, so bear with me. I'm watching your screens. Some will refresh quicker than others. There, most of you should have it now. We want to give our new report a home. We're going to right-click on Home and select Add Folder. We will call our folder Sales Comparison. First, we will build the two standard reports. Right-click on our new folder and select Add New Report. Select Standard Report and call it Sales Period 1. Next up comes a list of all existing containers. Your list will probably be shorter. We develop a lot of containers, so our list might look different than yours. You can alphabetize the container names by clicking on the name header. For our report, let's select Sales Analysis. The container name might be duplicated. However, each container has a unique ID in the rightmost column of the list. We're going to use Container ID 2. Next, select the fields for the report, placing a check mark in the box next to the field names, and then select OK. Our fields that we identified were company name, customer name, customer type, date, item description, line item, and line sales amount. Click OK. Line item and line sales amount.
Line quantity and line sales, right?
Yep, you got it. Select Sales Period 1 report and you will see the properties and the controls of the report on the right side of the screen. Click on the Columns tab and this will show the fields we selected for the container. This container includes all types of sales transactions, so we need to filter transaction type to only be equal to invoices and credit memos. We do that with the Filter tab. On the Filter tab, click the Add button, and you will find all the fields from the container. You do not have to have the fields in the Reports column to use them as a filter. Select Transaction Type, and since we want more than one transaction type, we will use the command ISIN for this report. Click on the ellipsis button to bring up the list of choices from the container. We will check mark invoices and credit memos and click OK. We now want to give the user the ability to select any sales period by creating two date parameters, a begin date and an end date, which will form a date range for our report. We will do this on the Parameter tab. From the Parameter tab, select the Add button, scroll down to Date, click OK, and the first selection will be greater than or equal to, and leave the default blank. Repeat the process to create the ending date parameter. From the Parameter tab, select the Add button, scroll down to Date, and this time select less than or equal to, and leave the default blank. Okay, that's it. We created a sub-report. It's all complete and could be ready to use. However, we need two reports. So to save time, let's copy Sales Period 1 report and create our Sales Period 2, since it has all the same fields and filters. Right-click on the Sales Period 1 report and select Copy. Right-click on the Sales Comparison folder and select Paste. Notice the copied report is called Copy of Sales Period 1. To rename it, right-click on the copy and select Rename and change it to Sales Period 2. We have two sub-reports. Now we're ready to create our union report using the two standard reports we just made. Right-click on the Sales Comparison folder, select Add Report. This time, select Union Report and name the report Sales Comparison. Select Sales Period 1 and Sales Period 2 from the list of all the BI reports shown, and click OK. Notice the icon for the Union report is green. And the icon for the standard reports is blue. Double-click the Sales Comparison report and highlight Union Subreports. On the right side, notice that both of your standard reports are listed. Also notice that both standard reports are headed to the same output sheet, Sheet 1. Now, having both subreports go to the same raw data Sheet 1 isn't always a bad thing. In fact, it's a great way to create a report following a database rebuild where you want to combine two different databases into one report. As long as the data columns are identical as they are in our report, they will populate Sheet 1, one above the other, and then could be pulled together in a pivot table and be able to show a continuous date range spanning old data and rebuilt data. Good for that. However, our Sales Comparison report, we need the report headed to separate output sheets. So we need to push each subreport to a different sheet. Right-click on Sales Period 2, select Properties, and change the output sheet to 3. The report parameters are headed to Sheet 2, so we don't want to choose that sheet for our data. We'll look at the parameters on sheet 2 a bit later. Okay, we're done. We've finished a union report and 2 standard reports, and we're ready to run our union report. Good job, Dave.
Thanks, Doris.
During the report design and development, we will stay in Report Manager. Later, our finished report can be run directly from within Peachtree. In the Report Manager, select Sales Comparison and click on the Run icon at the top, or select Run with your mouse. Because SPBI runs sub-reports from the bottom up, the first parameter is for Sales Period 2. Enter the begin and end date by clicking the ellipsis button to bring up a calendar. We will select February 1, 2012 to February 29, 2012. The second prompt is for Sales Period 1. Select January 1, 2012 to January 31, 2012. The report is now sending Sales Period 1 raw data to Sheet 1 and Sales Period 2 raw data to Sheet 3. And Sheet 2 will have the report parameters. We will be using the user-selected dates from the report parameter sheet later and a handy formula that Dave will write. Notice on both raw data sheets, Sheet 1 and Sheet 3, there are data fields that are blank. Get your spotlight out, Dave, and show it to us. You like those tools. These can be avoided by using filters on the 2 standard reports back in the Report Manager. Also notice that the raw data is sorted by date. In our finished report, we want the results to be sorted by customer type, then customer. However, this will be taken care of in our pivot tables later. The first time you run a new report, it's not unusual to find something that needs to be cleaned up, as we did with this run. So let's close Excel and do not save. Return to the Report Manager to filter out those blank data fields. To remove the blank data fields, we need to add a filter on both standard reports. On Sales Period 1, select Add from the Filter tab,
Waiting for your screens. There we go.
select the data field, Item Description, then not equal to, and we're going to enter blank just as we saw it on the Excel sheet.
Sometimes if the field is actually blank without the word blank, you can use double quote space double quote, which means blank. But in this case, this version of Excel displays greater than blank, less than.
Good point. In Peachtree, there's several different item classes that can be assigned to an inventory item. Inventory items with the item class description, such as, "Thank you for your business," are of no use to a sales report, so we're going to filter them out as well while we're here. To eliminate description items from our report, add a filter, choosing item class, not equal to, and you'll enter in the number 2. 2 designates the description item class. You just have to trust me on this one. After selecting OK, we will move to sales period 2 and put the filters in there too.
Okay.
We're going to do item description, not equal to blank. And a filter for item class, not equal to the number 2.
Okay.
Also, to save time in this building and testing phase, let's also enter default date prompts so we don't have to keep entering the date ranges every time we run the union report during our building time. On both standard reports, return to the parameter tab, and this time let's enter default dates. Select sales period 1,
Okay.
and on the parameter tab, select properties by right-clicking on the first date parameter. In the Properties window, select the ellipsis button next to the default date and populate January 1, 2012.
All right.
Repeat for the end date using January 31st, 2012.
Okay. Period 2.
For sales period 2, on the parameter tab, change the beginning date under properties to February 1st, 2012. And the end date, February 29th. We'll remove these default parameters later when the report is finished, but it'll save a lot of time during our testing phase. Great.
All right.
Now we're ready to rerun our report and see how we did. Select the union report and the run icon. Notice this time that sales period 2 date range parameter has the defaults that we set up. So now all you need to do is click OK instead of entering both date range parameters.
Much easier.
Much easier than clicking through the calendar. Okay, when we did the first run of the report, we found blank data fields, so we did not save our work, but we returned to the report manager to filter out those blanks. Often it takes a couple practice runs to catch all the items that need to be cleaned up. Let's see how we did. Notice the blank rows are now removed on sheet 1 and sheet 2. Looks good. Let's rename sheet 1 to be period 1, since that's our period 1 raw data. And on sheet 3, we will change the name to period 2.
And that's just a right click on the
Right.
name and select rename. Okay.
Great. Well, we've made some progress with our report, so let's create and link. While the Excel workbook is still displayed, return to the Report Manager to save our work.
Okay.
Right-click on the Union Report name and select Create and Link. From the list, select the workbook that contains your report. The first time you save the report, this will be Book 1. Select Yes when prompted about placing parameters on the second sheet. On the template file format screen, select the version of Excel to use for the report. Waiting for your screens to refresh to the template screen.
It's acting like a Monday.
It's acting like it's still sleeping. It's acting like a time change.
There
we
it is.
go. On the template file format screen, select the version of Excel to use for your report. We will be using Excel 2007 template, which works for both 07 and 2010. Book 1 will be changed to the report name unless you choose to change it yourself. We'll just accept the default and click OK. Great. Now our report is saved with what we have done so far, and we can continue to build it. Let's run the report again using the default dates. We're using an Excel 2007 template for this report. If you're using an older version of Excel, like 2003, you could select that instead, and it will still work for this report. However, we would encourage you to upgrade to the newer version of Microsoft Office for SPDI reporting, so you don't miss out on some of the cool things that you can't do in the older versions that are only available in the newer ones. Our reports are running and we're waiting for the screens to refresh, and we'll be back in Excel. Now we're going to begin to use our raw data to build the report that the user will see with pivot tables and charts. Sounds like fun.
I can't wait.
First, let's create a new sheet to provide a target for our 2 pivot tables. So at the bottom, click to make a new sheet and rename it Sales Comparison. It's important to make sure that the new sheet is not in positions 1, 2, or 3, because these are reserved for raw data and our parameters. So be careful on that. On the Period 1 sheet, click inside the table and select Pivot Table from the Insert tab of the ribbon. We're not sure if the screens are refreshed, but we're waiting. Gives me a chance to breathe. Well,
Okay, I
I'm
think
sure.
I can see it.
Yes, I'm sure some of you have refreshed, some haven't. Press F3 to see a list of named ranges and select Raw Data from the list.
One of the most important things.
It is raw data, not raw data columns, but raw data.
For those of you that don't know why we're selecting the raw data, often you'll run a report and the columns are going to stay the same, but the number of rows can change based on the date range you selected. So selecting the raw data named range will allow you to always capture the shorter number of rows or the longer number of rows that become the raw data based on the parameters. That's one of the nice things about BI.
Thanks for that tip, Dave. Choose where you want the pivot table and select Existing Worksheet. Go to the Sales Comparison tab and click in cell B10, then select OK.
All right.
We're going to place fields into our pivot table using the Period 1 data. Highlight Customer Type, left-click and drag to the row label box. Left-click and drag Customer Name to the row label box. And the fields we want to add up will be line quantity and sales amount. So drag line quantity to the values box and line sales amount to the values box. You're building a pivot table. Good job. Let's do a bit of pivot table cleanup. Highlight the rows label field in cells B10, and in the formula bar at the top, change it to read customer type dash name.
There you go.
We're going to rename the values fields. Highlight sum of line quantity, because that's way too long, and change it to # sales. Highlight sum of line sales amounts and change it to $ sales. Well, let's format the values for both of those numbers. Click on Unit Sales in the Value box and select Value Field Settings, Number Format, then number, use the thousand separator, and let's give it 2 decimal places. Do the same with line sales amount. Value Field Settings, Number Format button, select Number, use the thousand separator, and 2 decimal places.
Oh, that looks much better.
Good job, it looks nice. Now let's create a pivot table for Period 2. On the Period 2 sheet, click inside the table and select Pivot Table from the Insert tab of the ribbon. Press F3 to see the named ranges, and what are we going to select, Dave?
Raw data.
Yeah. Choose where you want the pivot table and select Existing Worksheet. Return to the Sales Comparison tab and click in cell H10 and select OK.
All right.
Great. We're going to add all the same fields and formatting as we did with the other pivot table. Highlight Customer Type, left click and drag to the row label box, left click and drag Customer Name to the row label box, and our 2 values will be a left click and drag of line quantity to the values box, and line sales amounts to the values box. Looking good. Highlight the row labels field in cell H10, and in the formula bar, change it to customer type - name.
That's 30 words a minute, Darsh, with 2 fingers.
2 fingers. Trust me, it's 2 fingers. Highlight the sum of line quantity and change it to pound sales. And change sum of line sales amount to $ sales. Format the values by clicking on Unit Sales in the Value box. You notice it does say Unit Sales now. Select Value Field Settings. Select the Number Format button. Number, use 1,000 separator and 2 decimal places. Format amount sales with the same settings.
Wow, Darsh, you make this look easy.
You're doing all the work. To identify the 2 sales periods, we'll build titles on the sales comparison sheet. In cell B7, enter sales during period 1. Now you'll really see his 2 fingers working.
You're just waiting for me to make a mistake.
And in cell H7, enter sales during period 2.
Pressure's on.
Format both cells as font size 20. Now we're going to write a formula in Excel to bring the parameter date ranges from sheet 2, the parameter sheet, for both of our periods. But before we start writing the formula, let's go to sheet 2 and take a look at what we have. Expand all the columns so we can see the data. And notice that column D contains the date and time the report was run and the user input. In this case, our date ranges for period 1 and period 2. Right, we're going to use those in a formula, so return to the Sales Comparison tab and click in cell C7 to write the formula. You ready, Dave?
I'm ready, Darsh.
You're going to enter equal text, left paren, then go to sheet 2 and select cell D5.
Okay.
Hit the F4 key to turn this into an absolute cell reference.
Which is $1 before the D and $1 before the 5.
Now type a comma and enter the date format, double quote, MM/DD/YY, double quote, I almost said slash again, right paren, then type ampersand, double quote, space, TO, space, double quote, another ampersand, then TEXT, left paren, and select cell D6, hit F4 to turn that into an absolute cell reference, type a comma, and enter the date format as before. enter the closing paren, and press enter. Cool. Look what we have.
Look at that.
Now, to save time, you could copy and paste the formula and modify the cells being used. But we're going to write the formula from scratch once again, because practice makes perfect, and perfect is good. Okay, in cell I7, enter equal text, then go to sheet 2, select cell D3, press F4, type a comma, enter the date format, double quote, mm/dd/yy, double quote, right paren, ampersand, double quote, space TO, space double quote, another ampersand, then text, left paren, almost done. Select cell D4, hit F4 to turn that into the absolute cell reference, sure beats typing. Type a comma and enter the date format as before. And a closed paren and enter.
Just a note, as you're giving this cell a format, which is what the MMDDYY are doing within quotes, you could just as easily use some other combinations of MMDDYY, like YYYY would give you a 4-digit year, and MMM would give you like JANAPRJUL and so forth. So you can format it in different ways. This is not the only way you can do that.
Oh, excuse me.
Beast. All right. We forgot to pull our phone out.
Who's calling? We're not whom. Okay, those formulas look great, Dave.
I like
I
it.
like those. And practice made perfect. They look perfect.
Yep.
Let's align cells B7 and C7 to center using the middle alignment button. Also, cells H7 and I7.
All right, that does look better.
We had a checklist of things to do before we started. How did we forget the phone?
I guess we didn't check the list.
I guess not. In cell F5,
Yep.
type sales comparison report. And change the font to 16 point, underlined and centered.
Underlined and centered. All right.
In cell F3, we're going to pull in the company name. So type an equal sign, go to the period 1 sheet and click in cell A2 to grab the company name and press enter.
Screens are updating.
We love to get fields from other areas when we have our Excel sheets.
We're having some updating delays, but just remember that this is being recorded so you can review it after we're done anytime you want, and it'll go at your pace.
So let's change the font to our company name to be bold 20 and center.
All right.
Looks good. Let's remove a couple of those rows that we don't need anymore, Dave. Let's delete row 1, row 3, and row 7. And adjust the width of column A to make it skinny.
Boy, I wish it were that easy.
Yeah, I wish it was too. Let's give both tables some color. Click inside the Period 1 table and select the Design tab under Pivot Table Tools. Change the pivot table design for Period 1 to Medium 3.
I like that one.
I like that too. Wait till you see this color. Click inside Period 2. Select the Design tab under the Pivot Table Tools and change this one to Medium 6. Our favorite color, blue.
You're right. Looks like the Caribbean.
And in fact, let's change the tab color to blue also for the whole sheet. Right click,
Boy.
tab color, and select blue.
That's snazzy.
We're going to align over our columns by highlighting cell C7. You're going to need your Shift key for this. D7, or your Control key.
Yeah,
I7 and J7.
got it.
And right justify the labels over the amounts.
That looks better.
The Sales Comparison tab is now complete. It's a good practice to save your work as you make progress. So, let's return to the Report Manager and create and link. Since we've placed pivot tables in our report since the last time we linked, a pivot table confirmation screen will come up recommending that you switch off Save Data with the table layout. You will select Yes. Each time we link, SPBI will ask us to replace the template. Also, answer yes. That was easy.
Yeah, it was easy.
Good job.
All right, that was pretty easy. I guaranteed you at the beginning there was going to be nothing hard. Stay tuned for tomorrow's session. Maybe there will be something hard. Only kidding, there won't be. We've reached the formal conclusion of part 1 of this 2-part series, Building a Report from Scratch using an existing container. Darlene and I will stay connected to answer any questions you sent through on the questions panel. If we don't answer your questions thoroughly, please feel free to send us an email offline. And our emails should be on the screen here shortly. If you're not registered for tomorrow's part 2 of this webinar, please send us an email at darlene@phase1computing.com. And we'll get you the registration link that you'll need for tomorrow. And remember, you must attend both sessions to be eligible for the iPod drawing. Tomorrow, we'll start by reviewing what we covered today and begin to add graphical presentations of the sales comparison information. The concepts that we learned today and the ones we'll share tomorrow can be used to create lots of other reports. We appreciate you taking time from your busy days to attend this session, and we look forward to being with you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. Jacqueline asks, are the note fields available in the columns? The note fields.
You might be referring to the internal note, customer note from the invoice. And yes, those are available in the columns.
Ah, I see. As a field from the container. Yes, I believe those fields are They are available to PBI, whether they're in this container or not. I'm not absolutely sure, Jacqueline, but if you want to send us a note offline, we can check that and answer you back. I'm not positive. I know you can get it. I don't know whether it's in this container. Juan asks, wouldn't it be faster to just change adding parameters and filters in period 1 and then copy and paste for period 2? You're absolutely right, Juan. This is sort of a basic coverage of how to use the tools, and there's going to be some repetition, and there's always more than one way to do this, and you're absolutely right. Thanks for your comment. Okay, Diane asked, how does this report appear in Peachtree? That's a great question, Diane. We're going to answer that tomorrow. We're going to make sure that it's set to appear in Peachtree, and we're also going to show you how to make sure that the sub-reports do not appear as a confusing list. You'll only want to see the union report, so we'll show you how to do that tomorrow. Linda asks, what is the purpose of the create and link? Wow. Linda, that's probably the best question that you could have asked.
It's important, very important.
Yeah, before there was a BI available to us in Peachtree, the only thing we could do was export, cut and paste, and spend quite a bit of time doing that, only to return to do that all over again. What the create and link actually does is it connects that report name with the controls, such as the properties and the columns and the filters and the parameters and what have you, to that Excel template, so that you have control over the behaviors of the report. If you have a report that's existing already, which we do, and you open it in the report manager and you make changes to it, leave it up on the screen, go back to the report manager, right-click on the name, and hit create and link, you just saved your changes. Perhaps an even better thing to do would be to make a copy of the report so that you have both versions. You may like what you had and then may like what you end up with. So like we copied the period 1 and made it into period 2, you can easily copy and paste all of these reports back and forth at your leisure. Good question. Thanks.
And another note, Dave, what we do when we save our work is when we're working on a report, we do an export of that report to another area off of our computer. And then if anything was to happen to the computer, you could always import that report back in, and you would have any changes that you made, your templates, your report layout, and your container right there. So that's a good way to give you a backup also.
Thanks, Stars. Jack has a question here. Says, seems like a logical next step would be to put the two pivot tables together showing common customer IDs in the first column. You know, Darlene alluded a little bit to that we spread them to different sheets for a reason. Just for this particular report, that we have two similar reports, but in order to have two separate date ranges, we needed to spread them to two places, make them into individual pivot tables. But as she also pointed out, if you let them all go to just one sheet, that'd be an excellent way to do a rebuild. With the data from January to August, you do a rebuild in August, and then beyond that, you join the second database and pull it into sheet 1 as well, so there's a continuous line. Great comment, Jack. That's absolutely right. Jackie asked, how fast is the PBI for large databases? Wow, performance. You know, the speed of PBI it depends upon the complexity of the report, the horsepower of your machine, are you on a network or not, how many other people are punching in and out of the network at any given time. So my experience with the speed for large databases has been very, very responsive. It's not so much the database as it is the way you write the report and the complexity. The more formulas that you have and the more just basic, you know, difficulties that the report has to go through would certainly slow it down somewhat. I've not had any occurrences so far where it's really, really slow. So thanks for the question, Jackie.
In fact, often it's quicker than Crystal reports exporting out.
Juan asked, is it possible to import a customized report from Peachtree that is not in SBI like Payroll Journal? Well, you know, Juan, the SPBI is two parts. There's a template part, and then there's the BI part, the name and the controls and the container and the columns and the properties and all those things. If you created a report from scratch with a container that contained all the columns of your payroll journal and you linked them together, then I suppose that would work. But currently, there's no container in SPBI that has payroll fields. So that's going to require that a person have the knowledge of SQL and all those other things we said we weren't going to cover to create a container. And so at this point, yes, that would be possible, but no, not from an existing container. So that's a great
And you
question.
can't import a report that's a Peachtree report. You can't import that into SPBI. Jay asked if the webinar is being recorded so you can review it again. Yes, it is, Jay, and you will get the email link to the recording for both today and tomorrow. You'll get it in an email next week. And also when they announce the winner of the iPod.
Exactly. All right, Barbara asked, those of us that are intimidated by reports and creating them, which is most people from the beginning, need all the repetition and practice we can get. So with regard to the recording, is there any type of printout that would be the, I suppose what you're asking is, you know, to follow along with the words, and there currently is not, Barbara, but we're going to, by the time we get to the end of the second day, we will have repeated ourselves several times, and we made it that way. This webinar was intended for those that are intimidated by reports. If you're somewhat experienced with BI, some of this is going to be review. But there seemed to be an awful lot of people, based on the questions we got, of how do I get this stuff started. It looks exciting, but where do I begin? So this is intended really for those folks that are completely and totally afraid to begin. And so hopefully by the end of tomorrow there will be less people that are afraid and more people that go, gosh, you know, this really is easy and we can do it too. And that's our goal. Hopefully that's what's going to happen.
And Barbara, I have this written out, my notes that I've been reading. I'll be glad to share those with you when we're done tomorrow. So if you want to email us separately, I'll be glad to send that Word file over to you. I think it's an Excel file.
Yes. Jennifer asked, is there a conversion from Crystal Reports to Business Intelligence? That's a great question, Jen, and there is. It's a bit outside the scope of this webinar, but it basically grabs the SQL code from Crystal and turns it into the select statement in the BI container. So if you want to chat about that some, just give us a call, send us an email, and I can show you how that all works. I can probably also direct you to a different webinar from Les Allen that covers that very thing. So the answer is yes, that can be done. And I know you have lots of Crystal reports already built, and so you could build BIs fairly easily with a little bit of tweaking over in the container side from what you already have. So that's a great question.
But it's not a real clean conversion. There is some work that needs to be done. It doesn't pop right in. So be prepared for some work with that. Pull your shirt sleeves up, Jen.
Okay, and Juan comments that when creating and linking, there's a macro-enabled macro for when you create macros in the Excel workbook. I'm not sure if that's a statement or a question, but macros are certainly beyond the scope of this webinar as well, but want to be glad to chat with you offline about macros and how you can basically make Excel do dances and spins. Macros are cool, but they're well beyond the scope of this webinar. There's folks out there that have never even seen BI, so let's you and I chat about that one later, and I do appreciate everyone's comments. I don't see any other
Let me just comment to Juan. Juan, when you save your template the first time you create and link, you can select a macro-enabled template
Yes,
from
you
Excel,
can.
so that's where you would select it.
Exactly.
I think that's it, Dave.
Yeah, if you intend to write any macro code, you've got to pick something different than we did. So, but we can chat about that later.
Great. Thank
All right,
you,
guys,
everyone.
we really appreciate your time. And again, this will be recorded, so anybody that wants to review this, they'll be emailed out to you with a link in about a week. And we hope to see all of you tomorrow. And as a reminder, if you're not signed up for tomorrow, send us an email from the emails on the screen, and we will make sure to get you that link. Talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks for coming.